Lyrical Monastery Set 4 is coming out in English, and with that comes new cards, new upgrades, and most importantly of all, new ride lines. In these series of deck analysis videos, I'll be going over the ride lines, their strengths, weaknesses, playstyles, and overall competitive viability for the upcoming format. The one we'll be going over this time is everyone's favorite girl, Gorgon girl, Siana. Before we go on through, if you enjoy our videos, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really means a lot to us and the team. Thank you. Also, in these videos, these lists that we make and showcase, this isn't the be-all, end-all final product. This is just what we think works best. If you want to change it, then by all means, change it. With all those things in mind, let's get back to the video. Gorgon Siana is unique when compared to a lot of D-series boss units, mainly being that the deck is still reliant on the grade 3 abilities because the grade 3 is inherently defensive. The first effect being the only one that actually pressures the opponent during your turn, allowing for Siana to attack with an extra crit and drive as long as my opponent's total number of cards in the rearguard circle and guardian circle is 3 or more. That means that in order for the opponent to shut down your Vanguard's effect while they have no front row rearguards, they have to drop 3 cards from their hand to guard, which is extremely annoying to deal with. Her second and third skills, however, are defensive as they only activate during the opponent's turns. The second effect allows you to convert any trigger from your hand into not just a 15k shield, but also into extra soul for some of your soul blasting costs. This is good for multiple reasons, as it allows you to convert a 5k normal draw trigger into the same shield value as a critical trigger or a heal trigger. The third effect is her main form of disruption, which gives your opponent a choice. When their rear guard hits Siana, as long as no cards were placed in the guardian circle, they either choose to discard a card or bind that rear guard that attacked, which can be really annoying to a lot of decks that further push Siana's offensive pressure on the following turn. So the two main things you always want to achieve when you play Siana are to always make sure your opponent's front row is cleared out, which can be achieved either by Siana's effect or by reliably more of her mini support cards, and to maintain your hand and plan your defense accordingly to best use Siana's second and third skills. The ride line grade 1 and grade 2 Siana both have the same effect as the grade 3's third ability, which will in most cases prevent the opponent from rushing you with the rear guards in the early game, except in the case of tokens or with the lyrical decks that play Yuika, as Yuika's effect takes priority other first than Siana's, so Yuika can just bounce a rear guard back to hand before you can bind it. The grade 1 second Snake's Opinion draws a card when road opponent in the grade 2, as usual, and then it bounces all your opponent's front row rear guards to the hand. This skill massively helps out with the deck's main way of rush and maintaining draws in the early game with another card we will talk about soon. The grade 2, on the other hand, prepared for heat, is less substantial than the grade 1, however. That doesn't mean that it's bad per se. It does allow you to retrieve a Blitz order or trigger unit from drop the moment the grade 3 rises on top of her. This allows you to more easily guard out or ditch pieces of triggers for ride up, since you can just grab it back once you hit grade 3. Going over the direct support for Siana, we will start the archetypal triple rare Jacko Parade Therathos. This card has 2 skills we're going to focus on. The first one allowing you to bounce an opponent's front row rear guard back to their hand when placed, which of course helps with fulfilling Siana's first skill, but is also our main source of draw power in the deck, being CB. She receives 5k power for each front row open rear guard circle my opponent has. Then if there are 2 or more, draw a card. You never want to use this skill if my opponent only has 1 open rear guard, since the effect goes through and it just becomes a 15k beater. This is also the card that I alluded to when talking about the Siana grade 1 on our grade 2 turn. All your opponent's rear guards will return to their hand, then you can drop this card and convert your CBs to early draws. If you open with a Yuika in your hand, Therathos is the perfect target to bounce back to your hand in order to make sure it doesn't get attacked into and to utilize its on-play skill for the next turn, so overall just a amazing triple rare for the set. The double rare, Ratfish Runner Juno, fills what would be a major flaw of Siana, is that Siana herself, while an annoying Vanguard attack, is never really too hard to guard, being mostly 13 to 23 on persona right turns. This is changed with Juno's effect, which for a Soul Blast allows you to bounce one of your opponent's rear guards back to their hand, then you Soul Blast when you Soul Blast a trigger for the cost. She gives you plus 10k power to herself and to Siana. This power allows Siana to go from 13 to 23, or on persona ride turn, 23 to 33. Another card that increases Siana's defensive capability is the rare Wonderful Wand Ruoboa, which has the same effect as the first rare, bouncing the opponent's front row rearguard to their hand the moment she's placed. Her second effect, though, allows you to put her into soul when your grade 3 or greater Siana Vanguard attacks, or is attacked to give her plus 10k power for that battle, increasing Siana's offensive and defensive with one skill. Whether you use the skill offensively or defensively depends on the deck you're facing. If you're facing a deck with easy to access removal before the battle phase, it is advisable not to use it for defense and instead to use it to pressure the opponent, but if you're facing a deck like that, save this card in the back row for when you really need it. Last support card for Siana is the common grade 3 Lucky Utopia Nojour, which can bounce the entire front row for a single Soul Blast and then picks up power 5k. It's a nice card to have as a 1 or 2 in case you don't have enough pieces just to bounce the entire front row. However, compared to some of your other bouncers, it's outright just there. Because one of Siana's cards does utilize Blitz orders, it's only natural you play a few just to be able to get around using the full effect of Siana to its full potential. One of those being is Vibrant Sympathy from set 1, which can act as a 30k shield for as long as my Vanguard was hit that turn, and since Siana wants to get smacked by rearguards to activate her main effect, it's a pretty win-win situation. Another one being from Lyrical set 4 is Unseeable Exterior, which is a fairly decent and easy condition to fulfill for a 15k shield, but if our opponent's Vanguard is placed by a card effect this turn, it acts as another 30k shield, which works nicely against decks like Youthberg or any Stride deck set. The final good Blitz order is the Regalis piece, Evergreen Transfer. We can reduce the critical of any unit with 100 mil power or more and acts as a 25k shield. An interesting way to use this card in Siana is that even if a rearguard with 100k 1 mil power is at 0 crit, it will still hit Siana despite not having any damage, which means you can still activate Siana's effect to then bind that unit unless they discard. With that out of the way, here's the deck list we made for Siana. Of course, Yuika is a staple in all lyrical decks, especially since it's a busted card, but this deck allows you to have a more fairly stable early game with your Therathos. For those y'all worried about budget, don't worry, we have a second list come up that is slightly better for those on a budget. But aside from this, we actually play 2 copies of the Rainbow Jewel Cat, which can either act as a 20k shield like all the other Jewel Cats, or more importantly, allows you to fetch Persona Ride back from the drop, as Siana needs Persona Ride to push the numbers. And with the extra slots for 50 card rule, we decided to go with 4 Valsplan for potential early game draws, but more importantly for the extra 5k on Persona. Of course, please feel free to change these out if you have any better options or you think these don't work. By all means do so. For triggers, we play 5 crits, 6 draws, 2 of the restand counter heals, and 2 of the extra crit counter heals. For the triggers with less shield, like the heals and draws, we can just use Siana's second skill to shove those into soul for 15k power. And since that skill isn't once per turn, draws can only help us refill our hand, but also just act as good cards. When the counter heals, whichever one doesn't have a good matchup against a certain deck, be it if your opponent's Vanguard doesn't have a crit gaining ability, you just use the crit heals to push into soul. For the OT, we play Ito Saforo, as it allows you to play with basically a 6th critical trigger and allows you to recover your Blitz orders, combo pieces, or PGs. Like I promised, I do have a budget version of this list, replacing the OT with a Lyrical OT, Yuika with the Order Triple Rare Strega, which can help you find combo pieces in the early game, and also drawing a card in the late game. But we also play the Order Cycle Double Rare Scrupulous Costume, Ethinda, which replaces our Valsplans. This card allows us to search our order card known as Pretty Demon Cord, which can allow one of our rearguards to be bounced to our hand during our end phase, acting as a somewhat substitute Yuika. Some strengths of the Siana deck are its good matchup against early game rush, except the token variety of course, the excellent early game, great defensive power. However, some of its weaknesses are its inability to multi-attack, the ability to be controlled by your opponent, and its relatively high CB cost. Siana is a very fun deck that can be very annoying for the opponent to deal with, but not unfair, which can be said for every control deck you see in card games. It has a few tops here and there, I'm sure, but with the right pilot, this deck can make an insane impact. However, its weaknesses can drag it down in comparison to the absolute peak of the format, so I would give this deck a solid 3 out of 5. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. These new types of deck analysis videos have been so fun to do, and mean the world to us if you like the video to share with around to others who are interested. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.